Hey guys, I'm Ronnie here at Candlelight and Grip. Today I'm joined by Richard Ulivella,
Hello, everyone. Very excited to be here today.
as well as Jeff Lee.
And hi, everyone. I'm Jeff. I'm the chief product designer here at Fiilex.
Richard, how did you form a partnership with Fiilex? I believe you originally got a matrix unit and you decided to use that, and from there, now we have a quad. How did that happen?
I was on a set and I didn't, I had only just found out that the Matrix Light was a Fiilex product. I didn't know that much about it until this. And I was, another lighting vendor gave me the idea to try it out. And I did, and I loved it. Jim came to visit my set in New York. We were shooting at Steiner and came to the soundstage, and we were kind of walking around looking at the different light sources that were there. And of course, there's a Maxi Brute on a stand. And I said, "Hey, can a matrix be made into something like that? Like, can we have a modular frame and pop a couple matrices into it and make a big brighter light out of it? Because it becomes more than the sum. It becomes more than four matrix lights on four stands, right? It's not like you get a triple header and you hang. No, because they're arranged in such a way that they're in like a precise pattern, so that helps with the beam that you can create with it. Um, and of course, it's on one stand. So I said, Jim, like, what about that? And he said, well, I'm going to take some photos, and let's keep talking about it. And shortly thereafter, there's an email thread that started. That's the first time I had ever heard Jeff's name, and the dialogue started there. And I said at the time, at least this is the way that the story goes. I said at the time, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get four matrices. I'm going to make some kind of frame, and I'm going to do this because I want to try it. I think it'd be great. And before I could get to that, Jeff shows up on my set with a prototype. And there's Jeff. And we were filming at someplace in Westchester. And Jeff shows up, and there's the light on a stand. And my socks were knocked off. I mean, that was really cool. And there, he's like, it works like this, and here's the controller we're thinking about, and here's how it connects up, and it was, an extruded metal frame, and it was definitely early stages, right? But all the ingredients were there to start the dialogue and start iterating.
I mean, that's basically how it went. I mean, from a design point of view, like, we always thought about, oh, maybe things can scale up. We want to make bigger lights, but would people use it? How would they use it? These things here and there. But when you talk to someone, work with someone like Richard, who at that point I'm so serious about this. I'm so passionate about this. I'm gonna just do it myself. To me, that's a clear indication. Like, wow, this is not only something that's worth doing, but something that we should be confident and courageous about doing, because it's really, during that dialogue, we talked about kind of sharing information and feedback, things like that. This is something that we both vested in. This is something where we both want to work and both want to succeed, right? It's a new look, it's a new kind of product for us, and we want it to work well for Richard, and Richard wants us to do well so we can do it on set. It's like, I think it's that relationship which gave, I think, both of us a lot of confidence to go into this project.
So once you develop a light, you test it out, you give it to filmmakers, they take it out on set, they test drive it, they do their pre-lighting, and they come back with some feedback. How do you incorporate that feedback into the development of your units?
Right. And I think that's probably the most fun. I mean, this is we talked about sort of an extension of Fiilex, right? Like Richard became an extension of Fiilex, right? Working with us on the development, the feedback, right? And then from us, it's I felt very much to be very proud to be a kind of extension of his crew. Like, as you guys used it, what worked, what didn't, what were the troubleshooting issues? Let me help you. I want to learn what worked, what didn't. And then if you guys are going to roll in 20 minutes, well, I'm going to be on the phone, standby, just to make sure it happens, right? And so that to me was really everything kind of coming together.
When you guys had designed the light based off Richard's idea, we actually received the prototype here at Candlelight. At the same time, I had just gotten hired to light a Cartier commercial and thought it would be the best time to try out the quad because we needed a strong source to come straight down over the set. So we rigged the unit to a Max Menace arm and realized that the pin of the unit didn't support its weight properly. So our key grip Jesus had to tighten it literally to the point where the pin began to bend.
Because we had a junior pin without the through hole on the top for the safety for the
Oh,
cotter.
yeah.
So change that, and then I mean that's such a good point. Like it's something that seems some people like, oh well, that's we'll fix that next. It's anything that's critical. We don't just well, we'll deal with it later. If it's a critical item, we'll fix it immediately, right? If it's out there and deployed, I don't want to take the risk of it hurting anyone. Also, I want it to work for you. So that's something which we immediately replaced, right? Same thing like Richard. It's like, it's freaking annoying, pardon my language, when you have the quad on a junior stand and you're rotating it and it hits the darn knobs for the locking.
Oh, yeah.
Pin, right? And so I kid you not, it's on my little Instagram. It's like, I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? So we machined out some stainless steel little cylinders, right? I just TIG welded it on. I'm like, all right, it's not the prettiest thing, right? But at least the stuff that's out there right now will have this have this fix. It's welded on. It's not going anywhere either. But it's like, you don't know that until you're actually rigging it and you turn around and you're like, that is flipping annoying, right? So it's one of those things where it's being open again, being open to feedback and being honest with it, right? It should be better. It should be done this way. And if it's a critical item like this, then it needs to be done now. And so we push for that. Yeah.
A funny thing about that collar sort of thing.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily something that I might see first, because there's a lot of other things that I'm looking at to validate whether or not I'm going to use a light. There's just too many other things to think. But the first time one of my lamp ops put a quad on a stand, that before they didn't say anything else. We didn't even plug the thing in yet. They put it up on a stand and they just were like, why? I can't turn the.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the first thing they said, the first thing before anything else. So that, and this is why you got to get your crew involved. It can't just be the lone gun gaffer who goes to the trade show and goofs around, or sending a prototype to someone's house or warehouse or shop or whatever. That's not enough. The whole lighting crew, rigging, programmer, everyone needs to use the new stuff and use the new gear, and the crew needs to be enabled and encouraged and included in the excitement of that process. And when you do that, things like that collar, boom, you catch it, and you catch it right away too. Like, that's the kind of stuff that comes up quickly, not that takes months down the road after, like Jeff was saying, a product is already launched, it's been through mass production, and now there's thousands of them in the field and you have to make a change. No, you catch them right away when a crew really uses a light.
And Richard, I mean, I think that's I remember this very clearly. You said this. I'm not going to quote you verbatim, but I think it'll be close. You said something along the lines of, I know that this is a light that I want if my crew says they want it, if it's requested by my crew.
That's right.
And what that, I think there's one aspect of that is simply that it's something we have to understand that, to make productions work, all these things, it's a whole team, right? Everyone has an important role in this. That's why we're here, right? And we all have to work together on this. You cannot make a fixture, which maybe to the cinematographer or to the gaffer, oh great, how's those functions, but no one knows how to operate it, right? Or make something that's goshly heavy, right, which no one can rig, right? So, or something that the electrician has to use some crazy proprietary plug, and we have to reroute power from something else, right? It's got to work for everyone, and in order for that to happen, you need to, number one, like you said, enable them, right? You need to educate them. They have to be part of that process, right? And they should be heard. I mean, I honestly feel like going to sets, we need to talk to the rigging gaffer. It's not like, oh, they rigged it up and, well, they're not part of this process, so who cares? Look, they were the ones who set it up in the first place, right? They're as important. Without them, like, this doesn't work. And so I feel like that sense of the community and the sharing has to be there, right? And if we start thinking about like a crew, I mean, that's that conversation, right? Like that involvement, when it does happen together, everyone's on board and everyone works together, right? And so it's we don't do the, let me just hit the key player. Like if the gaffer okays it, then I don't care about everyone else. Like I just want the gaffer. That is not the approach that we do. We want to reach out to gaffers. Bring your board ops. Bring everyone you know who might want to learn about this. I'm happy to share with everyone, right? It's like we're ultimately, I mean, Richard, I know you can operate all the fixtures, right? But you know, in a pinch, it's really not you necessarily who, you know, who's panning the head or anything like that, right? It's
In a pinch, it's actually often the opposite.
yeah,
Most of the time, I mean, a lot of times, I really want to go set up the gear and spend time interacting with the fixtures themselves. I, I don't usually get that opportunity the way I used to.
right.
It's you know, part of it comes with you're working with a big crew at a fast pace. You can't,
Absolutely.
like, you just
Yeah.
can't. So a lot of times it is the crew that's the primary user. Like, yes, what the light produces in terms of light and
Mm-hmm,
how it
hmm.
does that, that's very important to me, and how it
Right.
ends up on screen or on the actor's face, or, you know, shaping the environment, whatever.
Hmm, hmm.
That's very important to me. But actually getting the work done and using the fixture, interacting with the fixture, that's the crew.
Hmm,
They
hmm.
have to be, they have to like it, and it has to be useful and
Yeah.
not get in the way. And
Yeah.
that's a you know, a real consideration. Very important.
So Richard, can you talk a little bit about your experiences with Fiilex and what is it about their units that you like so much?
Fiilex's LED lights have a very clear identity. These are hard lights, and they're not a off the shelf chip on board stuck in a housing with some kind of optic or reflector or something. This is real ground up, real engineering. And that means that means what I saw right away is I saw dense matrix LED and a custom optic in front of it, and real firmware and a real interface and real control. So it starts there. It starts with building lights that way, that have a clear purpose and a clear identity. Their lights are, of course, they all check the right boxes of, they're bright enough for their size, weight, cost, all that. They have all that. They've got great color accuracy. All those boxes check. Um, they have really good beam shaping because they're hard lights. So you put barn doors on even a P360, an older fixture, and you get real cuts. You get actual barn door shaping. And what I'm seeing of the Q5 is shockingly good. Like, it's real barn door stuff. Really, really cool. Real spot flood, right? And then there's the other piece that comes with Fiilex is the fantastic dialogue and support that we get. Be that from Fiilex in general. You know, there's Jim, there's Brian, there's Jeff. You know, I can't thank these people enough that, you know, we've really gone out to use new fixtures that a lot of times I saw in some very early stages. Like, I remember the quad. Jim visited me on a set, and I had just gotten to know the Matrix Light, and I think I might have just bought a few of them. I might have just made my first Fiilex purchase myself, and then I showed Jim a Maxi Brute, and I was like, "Can a Matrix turn into something like that?" And he's like, "Oh, there might be something." And sure enough, a few months later, not years later, a few months later, I see a prototype, and then one showed up on my set, you know, and it's like, here, try this. And from where we went from that early stage, that early prototype, which I remember it was like a aluminum extruded frame, and it kind of felt like a T-slot, you know, 80-20
Yeah.
thing with matrix lights mounted into it, and it worked, and it was like, you know, it was an early idea. Wow, this is pretty cool. And then you know, I saw constant iteration, constant refinement. And I saw something go from, this is pretty cool, to, I'm putting this in my lift. And you know, that's one of the exciting things about working with manufacturer like Fiilex, and also just the LED lighting in general. Like, we're actually choosing to put LED lights in lifts now as a primary light source. It's not like I'm going to put my T12 and a Maxi Brute up there in 18K. You know, I have a night exterior, and I know I'm going to be working with dense gels and colors. I'm going to put a few quads up there and see what happens. And we did that. And, you know, that was another thing that we went through a lot of testing, and there were some DMX control issues, and there were some DMX profile things that we really wanted to work out. And that's where, working with a manufacturer like Fiilex, the dialogue that we had, oh, there is no comparison. My programmer was texting with Jeff. The emails were flowing. Photos from set, like, hey, why is this the way it is? And the I wouldn't say instant, but the very quick reply and then solution, or reply and then try this, or reply and I'm sending you something, was really awesome. That was really exciting. I mean, it almost felt like we were all sort of an extension of the Fiilex QA, or the Fiilex testing team. That was an exciting time. I mean, some of it was biting our nails. Like, this lighting setup is, we need to shoot this in 20 minutes. Like, how is this going to go? And it would always work it out. It was fun. Living by the seat of our pants. It was fun.
Richard, what do you look for when you're trying out a new fixture?
It used to be you would try out a new light, you'd plug it in, you'd turn it on, you'd connect it to a dimmer. Maybe it would spot flood barn doors. That'd be it. Or if it's a fluorescent fixture, maybe it had a DMX port. Very limited amount of functionality. Now you start using a new light, and I mean, it's got an app, it's a computer inside the light. There's all these color parameters to check. I think where we are now in the evolution of LED lighting in the industry, we've come a very long way from early brick lights and 1x1 panels. We've come a really long way. LED hard light is really becoming a thing. So what it really comes down to for me is, I look for a light that has very high color accuracy and color quality. I look for a light that doesn't lie to me on the controls. If I tell the light that I want 4100 Kelvin and a few points of green, I want my meter to actually confirm that. I want that to also extend to all the DMX control. Any sort of remote control should also echo all of that. It needs to be bright enough, and by bright enough, what I really mean is it needs to be as bright as it weighs, and as bright as much power as it takes. So in other words, luminous efficacy and lumens per kilogram, if that's a metric that someone wants to use. If I pick up a light and the thing weighs 40 pounds and I get no light out of it, well, that's not going to work. So it starts there. And fortunately, the way LED lighting in the industry has evolved, a lot of lights can make that claim. Or a lot of lights can get pretty close in many of those categories. So then the next thing is, the next layer is I look for a light that has a clear identity or purpose, right? There's a lot of lights out there. Like let's look at the take for example something ubiquitous like the S60 Sky Panel. Everyone's used one. It's basically the form factor of a zip light, an old 2K zip light, right? We all know it's a broad source, it throws light everywhere, and it does some color stuff, and it has firmware, and you can program it, and that's that. That's just kind of a light that emits light all directions, and that's it. Okay, that's an identity. But when I look around, when I started looking at Fiilex, and I didn't know a lot about Fiilex actually, and I started looking at Fiilex, and I saw they have a clear identity. These are hard lights, and they're real hard light. It's not like someone is saying that an emitter that's this big is able to cast a shadow. They're actually engineering an emitter that's small enough and then fitting it with optics that it actually does what hard light is supposed to do: spot flood, optics attachments, barn doors, louvers, honeycombs, all that great stuff that comes with using hard light, that you can do. Fiilex was doing and doing well, and I saw that right away. So lights like I see Jeff and his teams designing are very exciting, because they really do have this idea of an identity. There's a clear purpose behind them.
So Jeff, can you discuss Fiilex's approach to LED lighting and how they develop things such as the dense matrix array and the specific optics that you guys use in your lights?
I think really our background, our roots are a bit different from other manufacturers. Like we come from our roots are really as a tech company with who do in-house manufacturing, and Fiilex is no exception to that. We try to always utilize our own core technologies. We develop things that aren't available. And in the case of Fiilex, that happened to be basically developing everything from scratch, which in itself is also a very fun, exciting thing to do. It means there's also, like Richard was talking about, a lot of room for creativity and improvement. And so for us, it's really, when we look at our fixture and when we start with the most important element in a lighting fixture, which is the source. And so that is, for us, the source is our dense matrix array. So this is basically a cluster of LEDs that are packed really, really densely close together so that they simulate a point source. And you get a lot of advantages from having things as a point source, in that you get really good color mixing, good output. It's very compact, and very importantly, it creates hard, shapeable light. And that is something that is really appreciated in the filmmaking world, especially at the high level. And so, but in order, to make a good fixture, I have to add it's not really just about that light source, right? That is, I think that's the kind of the heart of everything, that light source, that light engine. But that also has to be paired with good electronics, good mechanical design, ergonomics, secondary optics like lensing system, things like that. And so if you think about sort of, let's just look at the LEDs going from panels down to point sources, right? There are panels out there that are a few hundred watts, like a 400 watt, something like that. And it's sort of dissipating that heat over, one bias or even larger. When we're starting to make point sources, we have to take that same that power, and we have to reduce it into a size that's less than, basically 20 times or more smaller, right? And so that heat density is really the big challenge. And getting over that I think that's one of the major issues, is getting heat away from the chips. LEDs run much cooler. They have to run cooler. They're very sensitive to temperature, and so getting the heat out is really, I think, the major challenge of it. And as you pack things closer and closer, that problem becomes harder and harder. On top of that, LEDs tend to have a very non-linear sort of behavior, and so you'll see a lot of LEDs that, for instance, at full brightness it looks great, color quality is good, but you turn that dial, you start dimming it down, and all of a sudden you start running into issues you've never had with other fixtures. There's flickering issues, right? There's color shifts, all these things, right? And so really with LEDs, they just behave differently from traditional bulbs. And so a lot of different kinds of care need to be taken to address them. For instance, how do you do thermal management? How do you do calibration, right? How do you do color mixing? These are all things that LEDs they have advantages, but these are also kind of new issues that have arisen because of a kind of basically a different technology platform. And so I think we spend probably as much time sort of addressing the challenges of LEDs as we do utilizing the kind of the benefits of it. So really, I think that's one of the things that people have to understand with the LED source, is that it's a totally different kind of technology. And because of that, you really have to rethink the way you make lighting fixtures. It is no longer, in my opinion, take a existing, basically, 1K, 2K, tweenie junior baby, right? Swap out the bulb with the LED fixture. It's not that. You could do that, but the performance won't be the same. You're not going to be able to utilize the really benefits of LEDs. What you should really be doing, in our opinion, is starting from scratch. Build a fixture whose intention was to have an LED light engine, right? Build a fixture around the LED technology. And that's really what we try to do with Fiilex, is we started from the chips and then built a fixture around that.
Jeff, you probably get asked this question a lot during conventions or when you're out there on set talking to filmmakers. Any chance in the future that we're going to see something like a 10K or a 20K or a large source LED light?
So I smile about this because as I talk about it, I have to think about, there are the crazy projects, which are the ones that are exciting and keep us awake at night. And then there are the kind of iterative products, which are also, just as important. In terms of the iterative process, what we're trying to do in the kind of near future is to really complete the LED Fresnel line, okay? And so what we're looking at are, what are the commonly used fixtures, hard lights that Fiilex LEDs can either work with or possibly replace. And so we're looking at the commonly used fixtures in the workflow and starting there. Then there are the more kind of, and that means working at, kind of the smaller 100-watt scale all the way up to the few K, 1K, 2K, 4K range. So then sort of the challenging thing is like as we start from kind of the middle ground, which is I think a good balance, and we start running into two major challenges. One is that as you go bigger in terms of fixture, the power density, things like that, those are harder problems to solve. So I do think that our goal is to basically make Fiilex LED versions of your entire lighting workflow, and that includes in the future 10Ks. That being said, these are big projects. I can say that it's something we've are always working on something bigger and better in the background. It takes years to develop. So as I say this now, maybe I'll look back in a couple of years and say, oh, okay, that's when I kind of teased that we're making this product. But those are the kind of the big goals is to go kind of 10K and beyond. In the kind of near future, we do have things in the pipeline that will kind of fill more of the 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K, kind of that 5K range. And then it's always making things more robust, easier to control, more reliable. Those are key aspects that we can never move away from, right? And so it's the hard part sometimes is making the call on whether or not if we make a fixture that's just maybe has some peak performance and is completely impractical. Maybe as a demo, that's a fun idea, but can it really be used on set? That's a hard question. And then it's important to have an honest kind of conversation about that regarding just LEDs moving forward. LEDs are a great technology in many aspects, but there are certain applications where LEDs, I just believe, aren't the option. And so we, as a company that makes products that we want to be actually used, we have to decide, along with our users and the gaffers and everyone, whether or not this is a feasible fixture. And so we will do everything we can to complete as much as we can on an LED-based line, and we will push that as much as we can go, and probably a little bit further. So I can say that keep your eyes open for some kind of extending the current line in the near future, and then hopefully in a couple of years we'll have some more big groundbreaking products coming out that will push the limits of what we thought was possible with LEDs.
Richard, from your point of view as a gaffer, how have LEDs evolved over the years from their humble beginnings to where they are now, and how have they changed the industry, and how have you incorporated them into your workflow?
That's a really big, very exciting question. Well, look, eventually, I believe most of the lighting that we do on a film set, one form or another, is going to be solid state. It's just going to happen. At some point in the future, maybe we can look at Moore's law and we can do the math and actually point to some time when that will happen. But at some point, it's all going to be solid state, from the practicals that we use all the way out to the movie lights that we use. But that's some point in the future. Right now, we're all very passionate about getting to that. So we're all looking for opportunities to use new fixtures, use LEDs, use smart lighting, a little better. Where we started with LEDs in the industry, I would call them toys. They were usually small. Usually they involved some, array of emitters, whether it was the the ubiquitous 1x1 that form factor has really become ubiquitous, or little brick lights or whatever, or were single LEDs. I remember buying from DigiKey. I would order single LEDs and wire them up to batteries to to create things with that. But it was some element like that, an array of LEDs spread out over some panel, and that was where it started. Now we're seeing companies like Lightgear who are able to make these big LED soft panels, or LED frames where you have something that kind of looks like something that you would do involved in the grip department in the past. You get an 8x8 or a 12x12, and you'd put a fabric in it, and you'd hit it with a big light from behind or bounce off of it or something. Now you're seeing that all one thing, that's the light source. And then we're seeing a lot of that, and that's very exciting. And then we're actually seeing quality LED hard light that you really can use for hard light's sake. So I really think we've moved from if you want to look at it in terms of sort of generations, the first generation was a sort of toy panel, little bricks, and then we moved into these sort of soft light panels, one by ones, that sort of thing. Then we got into LED soft lights, and now we're actually seeing really good LED hard light. In mixed with all of this, of course, is the tube, the LED tube, and the LED tape. What I hope for is is to really see just as much coming from manufacturers as I do in the DIY. I think LED lighting on a set, we're seeing a lot more that is being built by the crew, or is being built by people in the periphery to the crew. So you really do see this kind of mixture, just like you did years ago. When we did lighting 20 years ago, you would have a bunch of tungsten lights, a bunch of HMI lights. You had some black wrap and bulbs and porcelain sockets and hand squeezers, and you saw this wide vocabulary of different types of lights being used. We're in the evolution of LEDs, I think we've started in this kind of one place, and now we're starting to develop this wide vocabulary of light sources, which is very exciting. It's a very exciting time to do lighting right now, as camera went through its digital transition, and all the growing pains and the engineering and the difficulties with that. The early days of that were pretty terrible. I was there, and the early days of the F900 and the 24p cameras and all of that. It was not the best, but we persevered, and filmmakers made great movies that way, and people got excited about it. And then we moved into the next generation. There's Red, there's Alexa, again, the vocabulary has expanded. I think camera did it well before lighting did, partly because there's money there, and also because it's a different set of engineering challenges. Lighting has a bigger one, as Jeff said. Heat is a big issue when things get very small. So lighting's making that transition later, but just as exciting, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.
So Richard, there's this concept I've heard you talk about. It's called lit from within. What exactly is that, and how do you implement that into your workflow, and how do LEDs play a factor in that?
This is really exciting. I don't know if this is my term or what, but there's an idea that I like to use, which is this concept that film and television these days, it's really being lit from within, meaning you look into the script, you look into the director's vision, you look into what the cinematographer wants to bring to a project, and you start to figure out how to light that project by gaining as deep an understanding as possible. And look, prep schedules are tight, but doing this work and this exercise is really important. You start from within the project, and then you start to make your decisions about how to light that project, starting from the inside and work out. So what that means, what that used to mean, is figuring out just how you could craft the tone, color, contrast, basic visual language, how you could craft those things using movie lights, because that was the primary way that you would get the work done. As LED lighting became more available, and other lower wattage, easier to work with lights, but in particular LEDs are really enabling in this way. You could think about, well, how can we light most of the set with practicals, or how could we light most of the set with practicals and then add a few LED movie lights that we can control the color. We can match those practicals. And let's say we want to shoot a scene on a really dark, creepy looking street, and it's supposed to be dark and moody, and a particular project I did recently, we did exactly this. We changed a lot of the light bulbs and practical light fixtures that were there, and then added our own practical light fixtures to that environment. I sent up one lift with LED quads on it, and I was able to, with the whatever wacky mercury vapor, sodium vapor colors I managed to create with the practicals, I was able to then use my programmer was able to then match to the wacky stuff that we saw from the practicals. We were able to match the quads to do exactly what we wanted to do, and have the movie lights then melt into this sculpted environment that really did feel like the creepiness of this street that we wanted to create. Um, and then of course, just thinking about building lights into the set. I mean, you see this especially in science fiction projects these days, where I mean, the latest Star Trek projects, some of the bridges look like Apple stores. I mean, everything is just lit and glowing, and lots of blinking lights, and lots of things that are slick and glossy. I mean, that's one example. But then even something as simple as building an office set where you can control every fluorescent. I mean, they might look like fluorescent light fixtures, but they're not. We'll do that now with LED tape inside a fluorescent housing, and then I can control, well, I want the right side of that fixture, the left side of that fixture. It needs to be daylight or tungsten or some combination. I can do all of that now right from the console. I can radio to my programmer and say, hey, shift everything 400 kelvins cooler, and there it is. So like lighting from an in, it really starts from the story, but there's also this practical component that I think having the capability, the accuracy, the potential of what an LED light source can do available is really changing how far we can take that thought, because sometimes it's very hard, or at least it used to be very difficult to light a set that didn't feel artificial, and it's a lot easier now. And in fact, I think it's really elevating the craft. I mean, some of the stuff that I see even on fast schedule television shows, some of the cinematography I'm seeing there is awesome, amazing stuff. So it's exciting to see what new filmmakers are doing with this kind of thing.
Do you have any advice for young filmmakers?
The first thing I would say is that this is, and you'll probably hear this if you look at conversations like this going back every so many years. This is the best time ever to try new stuff, try new techniques, borrow ideas from, let's say, other crafts, other industries, other areas of expertise. If you're really good at web technologies and code, Arduino, that sort of thing, use it. Like, use whatever you can to tell your story the way that you think is best for that story. And if you're uniquely experienced in using one or borrowing something you've learned from another discipline, absolutely do that, because chances are very few people have seen that used in that way before. So go for it. I mean, bring your own voice to it, and bring your own experience to it. And on top of that, there are lots of new stories being told, and new types of stories being told, that I think having a 400 watt light that can deliver a lot more light than was possible before really helps a new filmmaker, a younger filmmaker who doesn't have access to an 18K, sometimes doesn't have access to a 2K. I remember when I started, I didn't have anything like that. So you can kind of use the grown-up tools, use the professional tools, or use the amount of light that a professional crew is used to using, without having to worry about generators and power distro and big lights and all that sort of stuff. So take advantage of that.
For us, it's it always feels great and satisfying when we make an impact. And in the case of Fiilex and kind of the film industry, it's making a product pulling again resources and ideas from our very different, kind of variety of different businesses and different business units and even technologies to make something that works for that industry. That to me is the most exciting. And there are a lot of new challenges, but with new challenges is a lot of, like Richard said, a lot of opportunity. And so I really enjoy that approach. And I completely agree with Richard saying, like, this is a great time where, LEDs have really opened up a lot more options and flexibility, it's added also a lot more complexity. But if you view the complexity more as control and opportunity, I think you actually have a lot of fun with it. And I always encourage people, don't start with the super difficult stuff first. Start with the easy things first. Start with a simple, a simple tunable wide, or just an LED fixture. Just get started. Even if it's a toy, it's a great place to start. The industry started with, like Richard said, just toys, and then we've moved on to more professional products. And it's during that process you really learn the nature and the soul of the LEDs and how to use them, and the pros and cons and things like that. And I think we're in a very exciting time. We're also in terms of sharing information. There's never been a time like this where there's also, people learn off social media. It's through video discussions like we have right here. Like now we can virtually go onto sets, and it's just it's super fun. And yeah, looking forward. We really want to be able to push things as far as they can go, and not be afraid of them, falling short of that. It's always surprising to me. Like whenever we run into a technical issue, it's, even if we can't overcome like that, the ultimate goal, it's along the way you do really amazing, cool stuff, and you add a lot of value along the way. So it's really, I think it's understanding that it is a process, it's a continual process, and not everything is done in leaps. A lot of things are done in steps. I think that's what keeps things fun, exciting, and also keeps us sane.
A big thank you to you, Jeff, as well as you, Richard, and thanks for joining us here and for another in discussion at Candlelight and Grip. I hope you guys have a good one.